Hi everyone, this is Sarfaraz from Aristotle Prep, and we are looking at question 76 from the OG 13 Critical Reasoning chapter. So this is a bold-faced question that we are looking at, and a difficult one. This is not an easy bold-faced question. There aren't too many easy bold-faced questions anyway. So as always, we will read the entire stimulus first, and then before we go to the options, we will try to make a prediction as to what role the two bold-faced sentences are playing in the overall scheme of the argument. So let's read the argument. It says, although the earliest surviving Greek inscriptions written in an alphabet date from the 8th century BC, the fact that the text of these Greek inscriptions sometimes runs from right to left and sometimes from left to right indicates that the Greeks adopted alphabetic writing at least 2 centuries before these inscriptions were produced. So all this sentence says is that some Greek inscriptions have been found, and those inscriptions, some of them go from left to right and some go from right to left. And this fact shows that the Greeks had started using alphabetic writing at least 2 centuries before the time of these inscriptions. So the inscriptions were found in the 8th century. So the Greeks had definitely started using alphabetic writing, say in the 6th century or earlier. That is basically what the first sentence says. Now let's read on. After all, the Greeks learned alphabetic writing from the Phoenicians, and presumably, along with the alphabet, they also adopted the then current Phoenician practice with respect to the direction of text. So all this second sentence tells you is that the Greeks have learned to use alphabetic writing from the Phoenicians. So however the Phoenicians write, the Greeks would write. There's still a question in my head which hasn't yet become clear as to why, the fact that some of those Greek inscriptions go from left to right and some go from right to left, why does it show that the Greeks had started writing in the 6th century? I still haven't got the answer to that. All I know so far is that the Greeks have learned how to write or how to use alphabets from the Phoenicians. Now let's come to the last sentence, which is the bold part also. And although Phoenician writing was originally inconsistent in direction, by the 8th century BC, Phoenician was consistently written from right to left, okay, and had been for about 2 centuries. A very important sentence. Now I get my answer. You see, it says Phoenicians initially used to write both ways, from left to right and right to left. But from the 8th century, they started writing in one direction. And it is not from 8th century. It says by the 8th century, Phoenician was consistently written from right to left and had been written in that manner for about 2 centuries, which means the Phoenicians had started to write in one direction from the 6th century itself. So before the 6th century is when the Phoenicians used to write in both directions, left to right, right to left. Be clear on this. The last sentence says that Phoenicians 6th century onwards have started to write in one direction only. So now I understand, because see, now the Greek inscriptions that have been found which go both ways, left to right and right to left. Now, and the Greeks have learned how to write from Phoenicians. So now there is no way that those Greek inscriptions, for example, could have been written in the 7th century. Because in the 7th century, Phoenicians used to write only in one direction. So why would the Greeks write in both the directions? So the Greek inscriptions must be from a time period when Phoenicians used to write in both the directions, which is 6th century or earlier, which now justifies the conclusion of the argument perfectly, that these Greek inscriptions which have been found must be at least 2 centuries from 2 centuries before the 8th century. So 6th century or earlier. I hope you understood what I said. And now, if I have to make the prediction as to what the two bold parts are doing, it's very, very clear. Both the bold parts are supporting the conclusion of the argument, and the conclusion is that Greeks adopted alphabetic writing sometime in the 6th century or earlier. That's the conclusion of the argument, and both the bold parts are supporting that conclusion. So the difficulty actually in this argument is to understand the argument itself. Once you've understood the argument like we have now, there is absolutely no difficulty in getting to the answer. That's actually the problem with most bold-faced questions. Actually, most critical reasoning questions. The difficulty is rarely in the options, so sometimes the options can be convoluted, but mostly the difficulty is in understanding the stimulus or the argument. So now, remember our prediction is both the bold parts are supporting the conclusion of the argument. And we will look at the options now. So A says, the first and the second each describe evidence that has been used to challenge the position that the argument seeks to establish is absolutely wrong. They are actually used to support the position that the argument seeks to establish. So A can be eliminated. B says, the first is evidence that forms the basis for an objection to the position that the argument seeks to establish. The first is not the basis for an objection, it is the basis for support of the position that the argument seeks to establish. So eliminate. C says, the first is evidence that forms the basis for an objection to the position that the argument seeks to establish. It can be eliminated for the same reason that we use for B. So C is also out. D says, the first and the second each provide evidence in support of the position that the argument seeks to establish. Perfect. That is the answer. That is the prediction we had made. It perfectly matches what we had in our mind. So D is the answer for you. E says, the first provides evidence in support of the position that the argument seeks to establish. That is correct. The second is that position. That's totally wrong. The second bold part is not the position that the argument seeks to establish. What the argument seeks to establish is actually in the part that is not bold. So E can be eliminated. D is your answer. It's a very difficult question. It became a little easy because we understood the argument very well. Otherwise, it's a very difficult question. On a scale of 1 to 5, I would give this a 4 or a 4.5. Have a nice day.